ahead and call to order the December 14th, 2020 Select Board meeting. We just had an executive session that ran for 1 hour beforehand, a little less than 1 hour, that involved the evaluation of the town manager. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll start with the and anybody else who may join us in progress and is watching us on television as well. We'll start with the minutes of the November 16th Select Board, the approval of those. Catherine, I know you had a number of changes, and I'm assuming there's a corrected set of minutes, or that we can move it with your corrections as referenced in your email. Could you go ahead and address that quickly?
I would. There were just some grammatical errors. And so Kristen addressed those and said that they are in the record now. And so I would make a motion to approve the minutes as corrected today.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as corrected today. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, Mr. Eno?
Yes.
Ms. Woodson?
Yes.
I'm going to go by first names after this, though. Mr. Price?
Yes.
And I will note, and I'm a yes as well, I will note that Ms. Salmons will not be here. She is excused. We'll go on to the warrants 21 and 24. Dennis, I believe you reviewed those warrants?
Yes, that would be the absolute truth, and I'm glad you got a chance to mention it. Let's take a look. I think here we go. All right. I'm sorry, what numbers, Bruce?
We can start with 21 and 22 and then do 23 and 24. How's that sound?
Thank you so much. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. You can see some big time items. And most of it is pretty self-explanatory on the register. You can see the big one from Cushing Construction. That is for our road maintenance and the winter contract. You can see some other items here that aren't too big, I don't think. 652 for Maine Land Development Consultants, and it looks like that is some engineering things that came out. So this warrant 20, and as I go to the next page, you can see attorney fees is $1,612, and all the way down, it looks like a pretty good warrant. I'm very proud of this warrant. And so therefore, and then the $15,000, 15,000 so was in payroll. So I'm going to do this unless there are any questions.
If there's no questions, go ahead and make a motion, and we can also discuss it if there are questions.
Bless you, sir. I would like to make a motion to approve warrant 21 and 22 in the total sum of $95,260.82.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve warrants 21 and 22 in the amount of $95,260.82. Is there any discussion or questions? Seeing none, we'll vote. Ralph, please.
Yes.
Catherine.
Yes.
Dennis.
Yes.
Bruce is a yes as well. We'll move on to warrants 23 and 24, which is a larger one because it includes the school, I imagine. But go ahead, please, Dennis. 23 and 24.
No, 23 and 24. Yes. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm scrolling. All right. Okay. Sorry. I'm getting there. Sorry. Here we go. All right, 23 and 24. Let's take a look. This is the one we've already done, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, all of these have been squared away.
Yeah. So let's just go over it real quick and we could take a look. The bulk of this one, I can tell you, is 23 and 24 is the school payment. So you can see here in the breakdown, the state fees, et cetera, Cushing construction, again, that 29,000 going to show up pretty much every month from here through the end of the snow period. You can see the Kennebec Regional Development Authority. Is that our KV cog dues or something?
That's different. This is actually First Park. On that note, before anybody asks,
Yes.
come on. We do have a little bit of time still before we have the option of leaving that agency if we choose to. And I continue to believe, after speaking with Steve Monselick, who is our representative of that agency, that it probably is in our best interest to stay. Next year, they're going to have a revenue neutral budget, so we will actually not have to pay them anything. And I think we've turned the corner on that, and we should be able to start getting money back from them. And if we stay a member, we can get money back at a higher rate than we would otherwise. So that's a
Jim Dinkle.
budget, but
Jim Dinkle.
Jim Dinkle, that's right. Yeah, you know Jim.
I know
Okay,
Jim. He came in and talked to us.
let's get back to the warrants themselves.
Thank you, bless you.
Can I ask a question about the first
Please.
part appropriation?
Please do.
This seems like an incremental payment, and if my recollection of the budget is correct, the total amount due is $25,000. Is this a progress payment?
This is half. This is the first half, I believe. So.
Okay, all right.
Okay, great.
Something in addition to.
Yeah, we're on the hook for 25 this year.
Okay. So are we ready to move, Dennis? 23?
Yes, I'm fixing to move. I would like to make a motion to approve warrants 23 and 24 in the total amount of $403,167.09.
It's been moved and seconded. Thank you, Catherine. It's been moved and seconded to approve warrants 23 and 24 in the amount of $403,167.09. Are there any questions or discussion? Okay. Ralph,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Bruce is a yes. I will note that I did ask about First Park myself just quite recently, trying to get some background on that to find out a little bit more about it.
There was an article.
As we get into the budget process, we'll be talking about that for sure. Moving on, select board communications. Do any members of the board have anything that they would like to go ahead and communicate with the public? Just raise your hand. Dennis.
All right. I just would like to say this as a matter of record for my part being on the select board. I think since March, everyone has had to go through so much different stuff and this period of flux. And I just want to say thank you to everyone in Readfield for their patience and for their participation in things that we have tried to do in order to alleviate some of that. So here at the end of the year, as we get into the holidays, I tend to be a little bit internal and I start to reflect a little bit about how I believe our town did an amazing job of navigating some of the weirdest times that I think I've ever seen. And that is indicative through volunteering, through coming out to watch fireworks at Heritage Days. It's through trunk or treating to where they ran out of candy. It's taking care of each other and volunteering when people can't get out and placing a phone call. So I'm not to sound like a goober, but here at the end of the year, I just want to say thank you to the folks in Readfield. I love living here. I love serving on this select board, and I love to be able to say that this is my town. So thank you.
Catherine.
I just want to say that I noticed, I think our snowstorm was on a Saturday night into Sunday. And on Sunday, I saw that the sidewalk had been taken care of in town, and I was very impressed. I even saw people out on it. So kudos to the town people who are using the sidewalk for exercise, as well as those who are taking care of clearing it for us. Great job.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well, I'll wrap up our select board sentiments, if you will, with just, we have a couple of workshop. Well, we have one workshop. It's Thursday night, right? Is that correct?
It is this Thursday, yes.
Yeah, this Thursday night. But in terms of the greater public for this particular board meeting where select board members address the public, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and whatever holiday you celebrate, I wish you all the very best in Readfield. Thank you so much. We'll move on to town staff reports. Eric, we have your report perhaps, or just a quick update, and then treasurer's report.
Yeah, quick update. We're just continuing to adapt to the COVID situation. It has been evolving, and the spike we saw this fall really has pushed us in a different direction. We're continuing to wrap up projects, and we had a great road committee meeting last week to talk about moving from the fall to the winter maintenance, and basically everybody's kind of getting ready for the winter. We are as well. We have seen a large spike ourselves in requests for assistance. And so I'll also take a little bit of moment here and thank the public for their support. Most people who apply for general assistance in the town of Readfield are unfortunately not eligible because of the requirements that we have for the state of Maine, I guess I should say, which means that we have a lot of people falling in between making enough money to not be eligible, but not enough that they don't need help. And so our heating assistance fund has been used pretty heavily this year. I'd say 5 times what we normally see. And same goes for the wood heat program. We've gone through several cord and we're actually down to not a lot left. So we'll be getting that back stocked up again next year. But people have been wonderful, and the food donations and all these things that are coming in have been put to good use. So yeah, we're busy. And as Dennis said, we're all supporting each other, and that's wonderful.
So Eric, if I can interject there just for 1 second, do make sure you let us know if needs begin to exceed capacity. We'll want to know that. So just please continue with your report.
Yeah, no, I absolutely will let you know that. I did give a brief update. It's not on the agenda this time around, the fire station, because we've moved to the next phase following that select board resolution at the last meeting. And we have moved through the first phase of that. We now have our fire marshal's permit for the revised project design. And we'll be moving on to the next phase, which is working with design experts to put together a plan for the sprinkler system. So that's not in the regular meeting agenda as it has been, but I did think it was important to touch on that. And we're down to the last few items on the punch list for the building proper. I expect that it'll be within the next couple of weeks that we'll be having those doors installed to wrap up the new building envelope or the finalizing that building envelope with new doors on the old structure. And one final point is that we've had to run a snowstorm around that building. It has proven that we missed a few things in the overall layout of that, the walkway that goes around the back. We do have some issues with snow coming off the gable ends, or not the gable ends, the other side of the building, and we need to put in some snow breaks. So as with any project, lessons learned, and we have to make some adjustments to make sure that we have the best situation for long-term maintenance. So that's about what I have for the fire station.
Ralph has a question.
Sure.
Design for the fire suppression system, is that going to come from our engineers, or are we going out for another source?
I'm hoping to work with a design build company, and preferably one that is recommended by our current builder, SJ Wood. If not, then somebody else in the field that's highly recommended, and we won't be working with Derigo anyway.
Thank you.
That's your question.
Okay, continue, Eric, please.
All right, so I'll move on to my treasurer's report, and this is excitingly boring. The check reconciliation came through November 30th. Everything was fine. The audit, we hadn't heard from them for about a month, so I did check in with them, and we are still on track to have the audit at the end of the year. I think maybe early January at the latest, so that's exciting and encouraging. Comments from November, we should be about 42% expended for the year to date in expenditures, and about the same for revenues. Revenues for the month of November are down about 9% from prior year, but year to date we're up just under 1%. So that's a good place to be. And similarly, small numbers and small variance for expenditures. We're up about 10% for the year for expenditures, but that really has more to do with capital investments and capital improvement spending. So this looks about right. And actually we'll see what happens in February when we have taxes due. But for now, we're seeing people paying their taxes on time and maybe even prepay a little bit. Those checks that came in from stimulus have helped a lot of people get caught up. And we've even seen some revenue increases in a few areas, not necessarily above what we would have seen in a normal year, but certainly above our budgeted amounts, and really more or less on par with what we had last year. So motor vehicles doing very well, and no real surprises. We had planned, and we can talk about this more on the budget discussion, but we planned on some pretty heavy hits. And so far they haven't materialized, and that's been great to see. So that's really it. I'm happy to take any questions.
I would just comment on the revenues. I'm assuming, Eric, if you can qualify this, please, that the being down a little bit for this month, but being okay online, that's just mainly some time shifting probably due to when people had available currency during COVID or whatever.
Yeah, it's really not unusual to see a 10% shift month to month, but the year over year is what really matters so far. But if that 10% continues for a couple months, then we'll know we have an issue or a trend we need to look at more.
And when is the next revenue sharing?
We should be getting it in January, but I'll have to check on that schedule.
Okay, please do. Ralph, you have a question?
Does the town or do municipalities get a cut of real estate conveyance taxes? And if we do, what heading is that put under? Is that something that's a component in state revenue sharing?
I don't know whether that is part of their overall formula. I know it's not a special or identified item that we receive revenue from. If it exists in that way, it would be an aggregate in the state revenue sharing number.
Okay, because that's a significant amount of money that's going directly to the state without any amount coming back to the towns.
I mean, I can't say nothing's coming back because it all goes into the same pot and then it comes back out again. But yeah, it's a big number, but they probably want to keep it that way. There are a few areas that the state hasn't really been willing to negotiate or talk with the municipal association about. And I think that those sources are probably one of them. They're more than willing to talk about things like money that comes in for roads. We do get local road assistance funds back that are specifically identified, but that's not that number I've seen in their mix. From what I've seen anyway. So.
Great, thank you. The only other comment I have on the treasurer's report is that a few of the pages that are in the packet are actually illegible because they feature highlighting that probably doesn't copy well. So in the future, if there's a way to denote that a little differently or whatever, that would be useful because we get those numbers. But not a big deal at all, just an observation. We'll move on to boards, committees, commissions, and departments. we have the library board minutes from November 4, 2020. So thank you to the library board. I do want to mention that I do read these minutes, and I want to really thank the library for what they've done to keep their services going during COVID. And I've certainly seen, I'm a user of the library, and I'm sure many of you are as well. And they really have their act together in terms of how that is all working, and getting people books and videos and so on and so forth. So I really appreciate having that service up and running at this particular time. So kudos to the library board. Public communications. Do we have any members of the public that wish to address us? Catherine, you're muted.
Here we go. I'd like to just make a comment on the library minutes. I do also read those. And I noted that they evidently did not receive the Stephen King grant for this year, and they are going to reapply for next year. So we don't need to discuss it now, but I would just like to make us all aware that we had said we were going to continue on with the finishing of the upstairs, whether we got the grant or not. We were waiting to see if that came through. So hopefully we'll make some plans to work on that in the near future.
Thank you, Catherine. And you can count on Catherine to make sure that we watch that. And I really do appreciate that, because that's something I want to see as well. Great. We'll move on to appointments, reappointments, and resignations. We'll consider the reappointment or appointment of Deborah Nichols as our Registrar of Voters with a term ending 1/1/23. It's my pleasure to make a motion that we appoint Deborah Nichols as a Registrar of Voters with a term ending 1/1/23. Her certificate of appointment, which we will sign at the town hall. Do we sign that? No, we don't.
You do.
Yes, we do.
Oh, yes, we do.
Yep, I'll make it
We'll
available.
sign at the town office the next time we have a warrant round. So I've made that motion. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to appoint Deborah Nichols as our Registrar of Voters with a term ending 1/1/23, and with the comment that I would make in terms of discussion that we were really pleased with Deborah and all the work she had to do with this last election, probably a once-in-a-lifetime election kind of situation. And a 78% turnout statewide is what I understand the number was. It might even be a little higher in Readfield. I'm not sure what that final number was, but kudos to her. Any discussion on Deb's appointment here? Seeing none, we'll move to Ralph.
Yes.
Catherine.
Yes.
Dennis.
Yes.
And Bruce is a yes. Please let Deborah know she is duly appointed.
I will indeed.
We'll discuss the local COVID-19 situation and response and any necessary action. This is kind of a brief update, and Eric kind of alluded to it in his report a little bit. We continue to operate under emergency operations, and for distancing purposes, we're continuing to have all committees and boards meet in Zoom sessions as far as the governance part of this goes. But there's a lot of other things that happen either at the transfer station and town office, or how we interact at the library and so on and so forth. That's all challenging. We really appreciate everybody who is cooperative at helping us deliver good services on a continual basis to people. And I hope I addressed that in my last column pretty forthrightly, if you will, in the messenger. But Eric, any other updates to that, please?
Yeah, I'll just add, I did have a bit of a communication with Lee Mank today, and some over the past week or prior week. The fire department is going to be one of the first groups to receive vaccines in the state of Maine. They are scheduled right now for mid-January to get those vaccines. And today, Lee sent along their vaccine policy, which is a fairly standard acceptance or declination form to give our members or first responders in the fire department the option of getting the vaccine or declining and waiving any potential liability. with, of course, a strong encouragement that we all should be getting that vaccine, and particularly our first responders. So that's that. The item included in your packet is just a flow chart that shows the decision tree for how we manage two types of issues that have been coming up more and more commonly: either a close contact but by a staff member with someone with COVID, or symptoms of COVID, which could include symptoms of the flu, and it is flu season. So we've been working to make sure that we have, and this decision tree came from another manager and was developed actually by I think the town of Portsmouth, and they probably got it from somebody else. But it's a great way to help, I think, the board and the public and the staff all understand what we have to go through to make sure that we have people available and that people are safe. And those are the two important things. We have been able to manage staffing in situations where there have been close contacts or symptoms. And this tree has been quite helpful in that, so I wanted to share that.
Yeah, and I guess I want to add and just reemphasize what I was trying to say in the messenger piece, and that is that when you practice social distancing, when you practice good habits and masking and so on and so forth, you are helping protect our first responders in the fire department. You are helping to protect our employees who deliver services. So thank you so much. I'm really glad that we'll see members of the fire department inoculated soon, so they can work in close proximity and train. They've not had as much training time as I'm sure they would like. But all of that, when you help prevent community spread, you're helping protect the fire department, the town staff, as well as everybody else in your church or family and so forth. You have a comment, Ralph?
Just wondering, Eric, do you have a director of health resource at the county level to whom you can turn if the town were to have health issues and tracing issues or whatever else might be related to the virus that you can't handle on your own?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of that's happening, or would happen directly. I wouldn't even necessarily be involved, but we do have the Kennebec County Emergency Management Agency. They've been a great resource through all of this. And we also have a local health officer, Dr. Fagan, who is fairly well connected. I think he's retired now, but he's still fairly well connected in the community. So we have a couple different resources. And the state of Maine, of course, has a great contact tracing team. However, with the spike in cases, they are starting to have to cut back on whom and how they do that tracing. And that was a week or two ago. Dr. Shaw made that announcement, and it was very, sad to hear that they're having to manage resources differently because of the spike. And that's, again, like what Bruce said, it rings true, and it makes it so that we can actually do a better job of keeping track of who, in fact, is sick. So, yeah, all those things.
Help is on the way. I mean, I think that's the underlying thing, and it's going to take a while, but help is on the way. Great. We'll move on then to new business, considering the draft. It says draft agendas for the broadband and parks and recreation workshops. The broadband meeting workshop is on December 17th, and the Parks and Rec is on January 7th. These are both visioned as 1 hour workshops. They may be 90-minute workshops. And I actually wanted to avoid using the word agenda. And so when I put this out, it was really a discussion outline. And Eric and I did have a quick discussion, I think, about this beforehand. Not in depth with what I think.
Apologies for the word choice, Bruce.
Yeah, no, that's quite all right. But I did want to run this by the board to make sure I haven't missed anything major, and consider the points of discussion very broad so that you could bring in other items. But if I've missed something major, this is a great opportunity to just talk about that, or even talk about the process of the meeting or aim of it.
I have a question.
Please.
Well, we had the report promised from Casco Bay that was due tomorrow, the 15th.
I'm going to check with Brian tomorrow.
Okay, so if you receive it, can we receive it prior to the meeting?
Absolutely. I'll make sure the board gets it. I'll also put it out to the public, hopefully as part of not a teaser, but a way to, remind people this is happening, give them some information, try to get them a little bit excited about what might be happening, and at the very least, a little bit more informed. So yes, absolutely.
Great.
Great.
It
Thank you.
was
Thank you,
excellent.
Catherine.
It was excellent to see the mailer. It came through right away, so great job on that from the town staff.
Thanks. I'll pass that along.
Great. Thank you. Any other thoughts on those two preliminary workshop discussion outlines?
That was
Seeing
also-
none?
That
What's
was
that?
my same question that I had raised as a suggestion. Will we have any numbers to consider when we have the Parks and Rec discussion, or are we just trying to come up with them during that time period?
The numbers in terms of budget?
Yes, or what the hopeful projects are.
I think that's, the workshop is actually to discuss those aspects of it. So I wouldn't expect preliminary budgetary or goals. I think it's really for the board itself, us collectively, with any public input that might come at the workshop. Typically workshops are just members working and thinking out loud. But obviously if we had members of the public who attended those Zoom sessions who wanted, or particularly of those committees, the Parks and Recreation, we'd entertain hearing from them.
We had two gentlemen that came to us earlier this fall about wanting to put in a basketball court somewhere. Could someone get in touch with them and make sure they're aware of this meeting?
Yep, they're already on board, and Sean is going to be one of the representatives from that from the rec board. So I think it'll be good to have them both there. I don't know the other gentleman. I forget his name, and anyway, I'll check with him as well. But I know Sean is planning on attending.
Okay, great.
Do we know when the kind of numbers for that need to be entered into the budget process, where that is in the schedule?
I think they're gonna,
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So rough budget numbers are technically due at the end of this month. That being said, Parks and Rec is one of those areas that we do have a lot going on, a lot of unanswered questions. To your original question, I will like to bring some, or would like to bring some basic budget numbers for things like running the beach without a lot of permit fees, things like that, just to be able to give some context. It won't be a full budget because that's not, we don't have, again, the information to do that, but I want to be able to give you enough information to help the discussion without leading it.
Yeah, and I think it's great. I mean, operational musts that we're gonna, open the beach, okay? And it's, this person's got to get out there and rake the beach or whatever. So all of those things, we do need the normal operational items.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But this is a visioning workshop to some degree. And it may be that we're going to do things that are financially in 2 or 3 steps. But we'll be able to give some direction. Or maybe we're going to do everything in one big gulp. I don't think that's possibly going to be the way, but this is the meeting where we discuss that.
So there's still time if we decide that there are some projects that we'd like to see pursued. There's still time for those to be entered into the budget after this meeting.
Absolutely. And really all the way through April.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
there's still quite a bit of time.
Great.
The budget process itself works very well, and it's time sensitive and so on and so forth. But obviously, the select board can weigh in at any time and say, hold the horses at the gate here, or release the wagons to run down the road, or whatever. But we try not to do a lot of that. But on Parks and Rec and broadband, we probably will be doing pieces of big input as we go through deeper into the project. But we'll try to be sensitive and get those done early. Okay, great. Well, we have our discussion points for those 2 meetings coming up, and I'll see you all on Thursday night. And it is at 6 o'clock, is that correct?
It is at 6, yes.
Okay. before we move on to the next item, I would like us to try to do workshops at 6:30 in the future. Again, I want to make sure that I know it's a little later for us, but I like to make sure that members of the public know the kind of standard time that they can tune in or participate. So
concur.
yeah. Why don't we keep this upcoming one at 6, but put that the Parks and Rec one at 6:30. Is that okay with the board?
Yes.
Fine.
And a lot of that was, allowing people to commute from Augusta and so on and so forth. And I realize more people are working at home and so on and so forth, but I'd like to try to stick with that standard. Okay, great. Considering fiscal year 21-22 select board budget goals and warrant process. So this is really an opportunity for us to speak as individual board members as to the kinds of goals that we would like to see in very, very broad terms. Obviously, we're going to see a lot of input from different areas of operations and so forth. We will have a capital review and the number of steps we always take. But this is a great opportunity for Eric to hear what is on board members' minds as really key items to be considerate of. So with that, I will invite any board member who wishes to start to please go ahead. Ralph.
Okay, I have a couple of items, and they're fairly broad-based, and whether they're doable or not, I'm not sure. But in terms of the practice of initiating carry forwards at the front end of the budget process, I would like budget documents and the warrant that goes to the town to show those carry forward estimates and include them as part of the proposed appropriation for that particular line item for the upcoming fiscal year, so that we know exactly what the total amount is for that particular line, which I don't think we do right now. If I'm mistaken, then I'm probably reading the document wrong, and that's probably understandable given my my remedial state these days. But I think those carry forwards, to the extent we're going to use them, ought to be part of that total appropriation number, and there ought to be an amended column in our reporting forms that shows what that carry forward is, so that we will know exactly where we are over the course of a fiscal year. Item number 2 has to do with capital planning and capital non-recurring. I think we need more specificity in terms of what the projects are, the timeline for those projects, what we will be saving specifically for these projects in capital non-recurring appropriations, so we know what the offsets are. And then as part of the planning process, I would like to know that total cost, anticipated total cost with inflation built in, and then what the potential mill rate impact might be within the context of the entire budget. And finally, we're a small town, rural residential, but we've got to start thinking about looking to the extent we can in terms of finding alternative revenue sources, because I see for the next 5 years or so, our mill rate being significantly challenged in terms of trying to keep a lid on it. If we go ahead with broadband, if we go ahead with salt and sand. So the one item that caught my eye was in terms of our revenue stream is personal property. And is that really an actual, a precise reflection of what is actually out there? We certainly don't, I think, want to find ourselves in a position where we're dunning people for snow plows and that sort of thing. But I'm just wondering whether or not we're totally up to speed there. And of course, we don't want to have an adverse impact on the commercial and industrial interests we have in town. But that number right now, I think we estimate maybe $20,000 a year in personal property out of a total budget of $4 or $5 million or whatever it is. That seems to me to be low. So it's just, we need to scratch our heads, to my mind at least, and see if there are alternative sources. To that point, my question about real estate conveyance taxes. Do we get a share? Most states do, especially the filing fees. The state keeps the lion's share of it, but the town should get something back because they do the lion's share of the work, or the counties do, and they have to pay for the filing. And I don't know whether or not we get personal property revenue from our from our electrical supplier in terms of the property that they have in town, poles, lines, and that sort of stuff. That all has value, and to my mind, it's taxable, especially in light of the lousy relationship that CMP has with the state as a whole. I wouldn't have any problem with saying, hey, if you're not providing revenue to the municipalities which you serve, then maybe we ought to think about how you could do that. And those are my budget points of concern for heading number 1.
Okay, great. Anybody else have some goals and directions that they're thinking about? Catherine, please.
Okay. So it's hard for me to keep them separated, but I'll try my best to just hit the top section. So along with Ralph, my basic goal is to have responsible planning in the CIP. And I don't mean to imply that it has not been responsible, because I think it's anything but that. We didn't have one until a time when I was on the board and we implemented that. And I think we've been doing a great job. That doesn't mean we can't do better. We have some big projects coming up that I'll be mentioning in my second section that we've all talked about as a board already. And in order to do those, we do need to have really good information, and not just what Ralph was talking about, but also about Readfield's financial health in terms of what we can borrow, what we have currently borrowed, what is typical for towns of our size to borrow. I think we provide for an awful lot of things with upfront funding rather than through any financing mechanisms. And I think that we could probably maybe do a better job at using some of those mechanisms. So that's where I'm at.
Go ahead and complete all of your thoughts, Catherine. And that's kind of what I meant up front. So I'll, after you, go
Okay.
back to Ralph if he has anything to add.
So my goals are fiber to the home. I see that as our first and foremost critical goal because it affects everyone currently, and we're all on the same page of it being a goal, maybe not our top goal. And then I see a sort of community services bond possibly coming through to fund parks, recreation, beach, trails, the sidewalk, to complete the library. I think that's probably going to be a much better way to handle it, to lump those together in a financial sense, not in a planning sense. And then if there's any other infrastructure needs, such as the salt and sand shed, that would be a separate issue for me. So I'm done.
Thanks. Ralph, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we go to Dennis?
Well, I think Catherine touched on something that I was going to comment on in the second section, and that is instead of pay as you go out of the residential property tax, it may be a better approach with less impact on the actual mill rate if we can establish a line of credit with prioritized capital projects and draw down that funding over a course of time so that you can chart what the impact on the mill rate would be. We need predictability here because we have a lot of things on our plate that we ought to be doing, that we want to do. But we have to be very careful in how we approach them and how we fund them.
Thank you. Dennis?
I don't think I have anything groundbreaking to add here. I think both what Ralph explains and what Catherine mentions, I think are all important. I my vision for the beach rollout is that it is something that, people take advantage of. And my goal is Readfield has a lot of great things, resources, trails, so much good stuff. And I just want to continue to see it progress in its usage and its care and maintenance. The beach is great. It is now free. So now I want to move in a direction where we can offer more things to one of the most breathtaking places in the whole town. And it's ours, and we get to take care of it. So the idea of having, facilities and activities that draw people here, clearly something is working. People are moving to Readfield. That's a fact. And I think this board has always made it a priority to look to the future, to continue to think about things that will bring people to our town, to grow our town, to develop our town. I don't think that's synonymous with change our town. I think sometimes people might get scared of that. So what I agree with Ralph and Catherine. I'm always open to ways of doing things more efficiently. But I also think that we have managed pretty well over the years to do a very good job with doing projects. And I have to say this, and I think everybody on this who's here tonight knows this. We have had a kind of project-based together time in at least my first term, where we were working on dams, we were working on all sorts of things. And I think we have a kind of underlying tone of do it right the first time. And I really believe in that. And I think as a philosophy and as a guiding principle. So I want us to continue to develop what we have. The other thing that I would like to mention, and this is neither here nor there, the money we have set aside for taxpayer relief in that fund, I don't think it's being used enough. And Eric, you can, I think there are so many hoops to jump through that it is difficult. Now, short of, throwing $100 bills around, how do we make it easier for that money to be accessed? I don't know. But I would pay money to see Eric on the side of the road handing out. But my point is, I would like to reimagine, or at least to sort of re-examine that process, because I think we can open that up a little bit more.
Thank you. Catherine?
I just thought I should mention that I know this to be true for all of us, and no one has mentioned it. We intend to hold taxes as close as possible to what they are now in terms of a mill rate on the municipal side. That is one of our first and foremost goals while we meet or try to meet these other goals. So we're not going to just try and take on a whole lot of additional capital debt and raise the mill rate. We're trying to retire projects and bring in new projects. So I don't want anyone to be fearful that we're trying to go on a mad spending spree here.
Yeah, it is a sophisticated approach of managing your debt load in a responsible way that we want to undertake. So, yeah, I mean, that was actually my first item, was to shoot for a relatively flat budget. Our departments and our committees are very good at submitting very realistic budgets without asking for a lot of tinker toys, if you will. And I'm sure there is probably some buildup of wants that has occurred, but we do know that the responsible thing is to produce a fairly flat budget this coming year. So that's one of my overall items. In terms of when I look at the questionnaire you had, I immediately then turned to the very last page in your packets, which is the ongoing select board goals. And so those kind of formulate the centerpiece, if you will, of what I want to look at. And so some of those things have already been reiterated by others, so I'm not going to get into any depth with them. But for me, both the parks and recreation and fiber being launched are overarching things I would like to really see us working towards accomplishing. I do see the Parks and Rec as probably a multiple year step, very strategically, more value added each year plan. And like Dennis, I want to see that beach open and that gym preserved and so on and so forth. But as far as some of the infrastructure things that might be needed, we may need to space some of that out. But I really want to see a rejuvenation, if you will, of the use of our parks and recreation, like we see with our trails. I mean, it's incredible now because you go out there and there's just people out there all the time. In terms of fiber, yes. In terms of fiber, I want to make sure that I'm going to make a bold statement here. Our goal is not to create a burden on the mill rate through this project. The idea is to create, if you will, a bond that is paid back by the users of broadband at a rate that is going to be very competitive, but very superior, if you will, to existing broadband. So it's a self-funding mechanism that the town backs, if you will. So it's a bond paid back by receipts of operation. So I want to make sure that that's the understanding. Now, that's not to say we don't have some engineering or infrastructure pieces that we take in and handle that may be town costs, but even those, I will be arguing that they are globally considered in the operation of how we float that bond when we get to it in terms of what's covered. So, but I think that's very, very important goal for this town. Other than that, I have one very, very small goal, and that is I'm as I've mentioned, I think to some individuals, I'm probably not going to continue on the board after this year. I haven't made that determination final, but at any rate, that's one of my thoughts. One of the things I would really like to see is board members who come to us who perhaps have different kinds of experiences and come from different age groups and so forth be part of the board. I think as a board we should think about some sort of addressing the remuneration, if you will, of board members. I can't remember what it is now, but it's just a few $100s. I really think if we want people who have fairly busy lives and may need to get a babysitter or whatever to really be active as board members, we ought to be paying a couple $1,000s a year. It's a pretty bold statement, perhaps, but I think with some of us retiring off the board and how we can time doing that, now's the time to at least have that discussion. And maybe philosophically people in town and so forth would be not in favor of that, but I think it's worth having a discussion on that, and I intend to bring it up in the budget process. That's it for me. Okay, great. We'll move on then. Eric, so did you hear a bunch of things?
I heard a bunch of things, and I think we can make most of them happen pretty quickly. Some of them I think we're going to struggle with, but that's the way it is with any set of goals. And I think that those are all worth working for.
Yeah, and as we get into the CIP meeting, we can certainly discuss how we might deepen that process and help structure things a little bit in a way that addresses some of the feedback we heard tonight. I'm pleased to say that we did do an annual review of Eric Dyer as our town manager. We had input from the public, and it's called 360 input, where we asked board, committee, and commission chairs, we asked employees, we asked the public, we asked some major vendors to give us some information, and the board itself, which works directly with Eric, has a lion's share of, if you will, feedback to also offer to Eric. We're really pleased to have Eric on board as our town manager. In the packet is his employment agreement and contract for the coming year. His increase is very modest cost of living increase this year. And I'm pleased to go ahead and make the motion that we agree to this contract, which is really, this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but we've done this as a rolling forward contract. So this is a contract, if you will, for the current year in terms of remuneration and duties and appointments and everything that's mentioned in it, but it's actually a 3-year contract that we're extending by 1 year.
That's right, and everything would be the same less the dates, which have been rolled forward by a year, and as you noted, the salary, which was increased by something like 1% to account for inflation over the last year. So that number changed as well.
Great. So I've moved that contract. I've updated people with the fact that Eric received an excellent review, and I do want to thank members of the public and board and committee chairs and anyone else who helped contribute to giving us some reflective and good information that helped us with our review process.
I'll second your motion, Bruce.
The motion's been moved and seconded to approve the contract as presented in the packet, which will then, who do you sign that with, all of us? Yes. So that'll be available for signature as well with the next warrant grouping. Any discussion? Anybody else want to say anything? Okay.
I'd like to reiterate what Bruce said. I'm not muted. Good. I think Eric has proven himself over many years to be an asset to the town and to be someone that many people use to get information and to have things explained to them. And we have very, very few complaints. And I think that is phenomenal. And I just want to thank him for staying with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the roll then. Ralph?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Dennis?
Yes.
Bruce is a yes. Thank you. Congratulations, Eric. We'll consider now 21062, which is how to proceed with a municipal solar project or energy purchase. And all I'm asking for in this item is really just some reflection on where we are. We had a solar project which we had a couple of different companies give us information on, or actually at the time, this was a couple of years ago, when we worked with an ad hoc solar committee to put a project either at some place in town, but we looked at a couple different sites and decided on the transfer station. And since then, we've also had community solar looking at the town as well. There's something involved with the planning board in terms of where that particular project is. That's something separate from what my consideration is. But what I'd really like to do is close the book on where we are with the whole solar project arrangement. I'm not giving up, if you will, on that. And certainly in the other prime mover was John Parent, who worked with me on this. So I dearly think that solar is the right thing to do for our power. And I think it can be a cost-effective way of doing things. But some of the cost considerations changed and some of the formula behind it. What I would ask is for Eric to reapproach Sundog and Envision and see if they can update and what they've previously given to us, so we can make a final decision whether it's productive to go in that direction any further. And I know there's tax credits and so on and so forth that maybe municipalities benefit less from, but let's just get the real numbers in front of us. And then the other aspect of this is to perhaps consider changing the town's purchasing from where we purchase power now to community solar, perhaps one that's based in the town. But I think we should kind of figure out, I think we're at an inflection point where we need to decide where we want to go. Ralph?
NPR had an interesting program on today about
Yeah.
community solar and where it's going. And one question I did not hear posed, can municipalities participate in community solar buy-ins for credits? I mean, could we be a player as well as individuals? And if so, that might be a way for us to go if we were looking to be green, for the sake of a better word, and also perhaps parlay some credits into reduction of the town's electric bills.
Well, I know we can be a customer, but your question is a little bit more specific as to the town being an investor, if you will.
Can we have an ownership stake?
Yeah. So, Eric, I guess we want to try to look into that a little bit. So that's part, and I'm not looking to necessarily do this on the quick, but I hope if we can just get letters back from Envision and Sundog and answer a couple of these questions, then we can get to the board where the board says, okay, we're just dropping this solar project, or we see something here we want to investigate further and let's do it. So I'd like to just kind of get to that point because that project either needs closure one way or revitalization. Okay, any other comments on that? I'll take a motion to adjourn then.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. Ralph?
Yes?
Catherine?
Yes.
Dennis?
Yes.
Bruce is a yes. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Anybody from the public who watched as well. Thank you, Eric.